All right, and welcome. It is not March the 10th. It's actually July the 13th, 2016, and it's time for the summer 2016 community call, which I've termed Key Priorities and Amping Up. July is a quieter month, which is why I figured I would do this call today. Just put it out last week in the newsletter. And even from newsletter responses, I know so many people are on the move this month. So I think this is going to be yet another sort of recorded session that many people will listen to. I've got a few live bodies here. In fact, we just wrapped up a session at the Learning Lab and Design Studio doing a design hack. So I'll invite, if anyone would like to say hello. My question for those live on the call today is, and maybe this is more of a reflective question, what does it mean to amp up your work this summer? That's really, the strategic question, I think. What does it mean to amp up your work this summer? Now, this is a big assumption that you are in summer. In fact, I'm doing some work right now with some Australians, and I was reminded very recently, they're going into winter. They just had their first day back at school, which was such a contrast to, for me, just sent my son off to camp. I've got, I wouldn't say alone time for 2 weeks. It's not holiday time. It's one of the busiest times of year for me. But it's interesting how, our clients may be at very different stages. So today's call is really to get you thinking about your priorities and amping things up. As you may know, I do these quarterly. It is sort of, the intent is bring people together, but in today's busy world, it's so hard for people to even clear their schedule. So I wanted to share with you some key priority areas that I've seen bubbling up in this first half of 2016. Point to some resources, and if you would like, I want to hear from you. And when I say want to hear from you, it doesn't just have to be on this call. Again, there's a couple of different fora that you can connect around. Group Coaching Ins and Outs blog, that's groupcoaching.blogspot.com. You also can connect around the Learning Lab and Design Studio, which is a new full year program that I'm running for coaches. We meet 3 times a month for group calls and once a month for one-on-one work. And as much as I love blabs, some of you were enjoying the blabs that I recorded last fall. I let those go. Blabs are a great way to bring people together on social media, but I wasn't seeing that it was generating a lot of real conversation. So let's hear from you in whatever channel works. Show me the money was the topic of the last call. And this is sort of like a teaser. If you did not listen yet to the March Spring 2016 call, you may want to. Focus then was on the benefits of group and team coaching. And all of these calls you can actually access at from1to-many.com. From number 1, number 2 sign, many.com. And go to the resources page, scroll down because they're all in date order, and you can either have a video or an audio of the presentation. You might notice that today we're on Zoom. Zoom is such an amazing platform, and just a little sidebar, really may be the only connection piece of choice. As you see behind me, I'm not in my office. I'm in my summer office. So this is not my little office nearby. I'm out on the veranda where I've been lucky to do some calls in the last week and a half. I'm up here for almost all of this month of July and the better part of August. And it really has been a great demo that we can continue the business flowing. In fact, I'd say in the last 10 days, I've been busier than groups, as I was saying to the Learning Lab and Design Studio, almost at the point of super saturation because I'm losing track of dates and which group is meeting when. But I'm able to work in a very condensed format without a lot of distractions. So with that, Zoom is great. Had an interesting challenge yesterday. Thank goodness I tried the bridge line. I had a new group starting this morning, 9 o'clock Eastern. And as you might know, if you've ever taken a course from me, I always say, please test out your bridge line. Given that most of my courses are now on Zoom, I sort of took it for granted that my bridge line access would be fine. Luckily, yesterday at 4 o'clock, I thought, I better just dial that bridge line. And what did I find out? Mobile phone couldn't access it. Computer app couldn't access it. Phone card could not access it, nor could my landline. Luckily, I had enough time last night to get out this note to these new people. But as you can imagine, first impressions are key. So priorities, I think learning here is always have something as a backup. And for me, Zoom and a Bridgeline are my two go-tos all the time. Now, priorities and amping it up for each one of you might look a little different this summer. Again, increasingly, I'm continuing to talk about the spectrum of group and teamwork. We're not always just coaching. We may be doing webinars. Certainly looking to 2016, there has been so much volume. I won't say noise, but volume around do webinars. And I think that's okay if you really can do engaging webinars. Some of you may know that I've continued to run a program called the Virtual Facilitation Skills Intensive. And that is a 15-hour virtual train-the-trainer program for people who want to make their webinars a little snappier and zappier than the traditional chalk and talk, let's show PowerPoint. I've run it for a couple of years now, actually 2 years publicly. And what's been really interesting for me recently has been that I've had a number of organizations who've engaged me to now work with their national or even international facilitation team. So what we're doing is not just needed by coaches, but it's being needed by everyone. And I think we're going to continue to see just iteration after iteration, which will impact what it means to amp it up, as well as what it means for our priorities. On a priority level, regardless of what modality we're using, I think a lot of the time it continues to be these basics. And that could be the interactivity, the customization and adaptation for our clients, being able to offer programming real time. And this was brought home just a few hours ago. I was on a phone call with a potential new client, and one of their concerns was, how can we really adapt for our staff reality and the time crunch reality? And I think for real-time programming, we always want to be listening for, how do I need to iterate or evolve our models for different groups? So it was a group coaching possibility. Started out talking about, a 6-month process. And as many of you would know, typically in my corporate group coaching work, it might be 6 months with an in-person kickoff followed by bi-weekly calls over time. It became very apparent in that call that, that model is not going to work for the organization for a variety of reasons. So my task tomorrow is to go away and really come up with a couple of a little bit more hybrid designs in terms of how we can do and have similar touch points, but over a 3-month period, given their staff needs. And I think these are the things that help us set apart. It's not every day that we have prospective client calls where we can really strategically together design. And that's ultimately what we want to get to. I think coaching is not like training. We can't take an off-the-shelf program and just say, here, this is going to work for you. We really need to keep customizing. Now, part of the customization is exercises. I want to spend just a few minutes on that today. And also just a reminder of consistently taking action. And when I say action, it's about action in relationship development and also marketing. So some of you have seen this before, but it really starts with your client. And I can't reinforce this more than enough. We need to know who they are, what's important, and what their needs and preferences are. And if you haven't thought about this recently, just jot down a couple of ideas that you have around knowing your client. Because everything I say today should really be listened to through the lens of, does this make sense for the people I work with? How would they react to it? How would I react to it? Is this something that leverages my strengths and skills? So hopefully you've got your client in mind. And with that, talk about interactivity. I say this all the time. It's the 7 to 10 minute stretch or the 3 to 5 minute virtual stretch. Recently, again, had a corporate prospective client say, how can we do this work virtually? We have people who are multitasking. They're answering their emails when they're on calls. And I said, well, let's talk about the capabilities that you have. Can we have people on streaming? And they realized, yes, everyone could be on streaming. We could even set up a camera in a boardroom where groups of people could be together calling in from different locations. And so that now is going to allow us to do a programming I thought only could be in person doing it virtually. And I can't stress enough, like, for so many reasons, virtual programming may be the only go-to. An experience I had last month meant that I had to do 2 8-hour days with 2 separate classroom-based groups, but they were now virtual groups at their own desk. And many of them at the end of the day said, this has gone by so fast. And I really put that back to interactivity. So below you see the different ways, whether we are asking questions, whether we are getting people to do something, whether we're getting people to draw something. Just before this, I did a design hack with the Learning Lab and Design Studio people. That is going to be something that, stay tuned, we may do another one in a longer process, because we need time to actually do it now. As the ICF competencies say, do it now. I'd encourage you, as you think about your clients, what are the interactivity levels that are going to serve them best? Is it themselves, their peers, the leaders, or the coach? Think about that. Some of you have seen me or heard me, really probably haven't seen me share this yet, but have heard me over the years talk about how many of my programs emerged and evolved. And I continue to see that in year 13 of my business. So my first program out of the gate back in 2004, actually that summer of 2004 it was born, was Design, Envision, Create Your Balanced Life, which eventually became just the short title of Your Balanced Life. Some of you listening in might be licensees. It's been a program that I've licensed now for about 5 or 6 years, and there are many of you in different pockets of the world actually running this. So it started out, interestingly enough, and this is all about customization, listening to what your clients want, started out as a 1-month teleseminar. Very passionate in those days about work-life issues. I still am, but it's not the primary focus. But in those days, I was sort of like I would say probably a burnt out global leader. I'd just come back to Canada, was so passionate about helping people avoid some of the traps that I had fallen into as a leader. And as some of you may know, one of the biggest things that did happen to me in my years overseas was I got very ill in 2003, and actually a simple eye infection led to some permanent vision loss in one of my eyes. So that was what really brought me back to Canada. I was no longer able to be in disaster management situations, conflict situations, and not be a risk factor to my team. So with that in mind, had this huge passion around Your Balanced Life. I wanted to work with people and had very lukewarm interest with the teleseminar. But people who were calling me said, this is sort of cool, but I sort of really want to coach it. And in those days, very lucky that there was coaching was understood in pockets around Toronto. And what the big factor was for them at that time was they did not have money to do it. So it made a lot of sense. Let's iterate this 4-week talking teleseminar become a group coaching process. And after a couple of iterations over about 6 months, it moved from a 6-week group coaching process to 3 months. People then started saying, this is great, but I don't have time to travel, to come in or phone in every other week. So then I offered retreat programs. And those originally started in person. And as soon as my son was born in May of 2005, I took them virtual. I just could not do a full day in-person retreat anymore, especially in his early years. I can do it now that he's 11, but in those early years of infancy, it was really hard for me, just guilt-free to disappear for a weekend. So virtual retreats became my go-to in 2006. And after many years of running it with groups all over the world, it then led to program licensing in 2010. So that sort of takes me full circle. What is really interesting as I've licensed programming and Your Balanced Life and the 90-Day Biz Success, I continue to hear from coaches about how they're customizing it for their own audiences. And that's the beauty of coaching, right? If we really are standing as a coach, even if we have the same theme areas, 6 out of 8 calls, it's going to look and feel really different every time. What I love about the Your Balanced Life program is it still brings me into organizations. And this spring, I did a number of speaking engagements around work-life issues, mostly around what I call time management and personal productivity. And I had the opportunity to do some really neat work with a group of primarily millennials, but I don't think it was that they were millennials. They were a design firm. And, you know, designers, and I don't mean program designers, like they're a design firm. What was really cool was just like how their minds operated. And I had a couple of touch points with them in May doing several pieces of work. And it was just a different type of conversation. So customization is key. When you see people's eyes getting illuminated, when you see people getting jazzed and talking to their neighbors, that is a good thing in coaching. So customize, think about what that means in your world right now, because I put it down as one of our priorities at the moment. The third one, the third priority, I think, is just the real-time nature. As I said a few minutes ago, like there is, I think in the nature of our work, honest need for like real-time needs evolution. I love the fact that things will land and you know what, they're real-time needs. There can be long sales cycles for some processes, but don't be surprised once you've got established programs if you have calls and someone's saying, hey, could you do this for us in 2 weeks? Or, hey, we have a team that's struggling. What's the earliest you can come in and start having conversations with these people? So that is, in team coaching, I find a very real-time reactive nature to my lines of business continuing. And again, you know, year 13 of offering pure team coaching work. And certainly in group coaching, beyond public programs, I think real-time needs emerge. I've increasingly found a lot of groups, again, it may be groups of leaders, it may be groups of business owners who hear of you and your work, and they don't want to wait until September when the next public offerings are. They want something now. So really think for yourself what makes sense, because we need to, as you see here with signups, we need to be able to iterate and also know where our boundaries are. Now, part of that means being in the moment, and I think we all have a threshold. I was saying to the Learning Lab and Design Studio group, you know, I have so many groups on the go right now, which is exciting, but they're all compressed into a couple of days. If I could do it over again, do my schedule for the summer over again, I would probably, you know, add another day to my calendar. I've compressed groups and my calls so that it frees me up for some more writing. As some of you know, this is like my writing time of year. Regardless of what noise we have on the go, so critical that we come and are present in those contact points. And I think as someone who is constantly moving from thing to thing, which has been my choice in business, it's again, we have choice points here. It is important that we know what's going to support us. So I know for really being present and really being polished and professional, for me today with a series of different calls, I've had to resort to PowerPoint. It would have been very difficult for me to do this call without a PowerPoint today because I would really be all over the map. So for yourself, think about what real time means. Another sort of element of this may be that it's about iteration. What are the needs that are showing up right now from your clients? What are the signups you're getting or not getting? And what is the tweak? What is the iteration that's going to help you? So I'm going to pause here, let you take one note or two notes. What does real time and iteration mean for you in your work right now? And we have a couple of people, I don't know if you want to say anything, but just because it's not always my voice, what, you know, as you think about these first priorities, real time, customization, and interactivity, what is the most pressing piece for you in your work right now? Maybe that's a question to everyone. I'll get people to chat. The nice thing about Zoom is you can chat if you don't want to talk. We've got a few of you online. Is there one of these three areas that's more of a priority? Being real time, being iterative, or customization? I know for me, really is about real-time iteration. So I'm going to collapse the two. All right. So let's go to the third or the fourth one, which is, interestingly enough, for those on the call live, exercises and activities. And I can't say how strong a message this has been. Everywhere I turn these days, people are like, I need more exercises, I need more activities. I did a poll last month through Twitter on what did you feel you needed as a coach? Was it more activities, more programming? And there were a couple of other options. Overwhelmingly, people said, I want more exercises and activities. And I think it's representative, like we can never have too much in our back pocket. I think we can maybe build our toolkit too much and not execute on it. And I would say full-heartedly in my own world, I always can get more sparked by new ideas. So interestingly enough, last month when I was at the ICF Midwest Conference, I met so many people. That this hot seller this year was not my books, which many people come and say, hey, I've read your book, look how I'm using it. And you'll see a photo here of someone who I was finally able to meet. She got her book, I don't know, maybe 2010 as this was coming out. And she has carried her book around the world. She joined me in Toronto last November for the 2-day group and team coaching intensive, which is a 19 CCE hour approved program coming up again this November. But I love hearing how people like mark up, this is a copy of Effective Group Coaching, they mark it up, they use it, because really part of my reasoning for writing a book and continuing to put stuff out, whether it's an ebook like the 40 Ways to Work with Visual Cards, it's to give you some ideas so that you don't have to iterate all the time. I love to create, I also love to execute, and doing so much work all the time with groups and teams, it's easy for me to even get stale. So one of my projects last summer, it started last summer at this time, was actually to start mapping out different ways I was using visual cards with different groups. And some of you may know me through the Conversation Sparker deck. That is a deck of 72 photos and also includes 22 questions, very much sort of not a pocket size, but just an index card size. Organizations are using it all over and coaches are using it. That's been a product for 2 years. And just after I launched it, people were saying, I'd love for you to spend a bit of time with me talking about how you use them. And that really led to me throughout last summer and into the fall, mapping out facilitation instructions on how to work with visual cards. So that's now a product with looking at how quickly they sold out. Literally, I had to go and make more copies of this because normally it's an e-manual, but I took hard copies to ICF Midwest. It's a popular product. So if you're interested in the 40 Ways to Work with Visual Cards, just click on over to conversationsparker.com. It includes 40 different ways you can work with them. So about 80 to 100 pages of content there. I do want to highlight another website that I think is so important to just even visit once in your life, which is wilderdom.com. It is an experiential educator's project. He's an Australian, again, another Australian outdoor educator. And he has pulled together links to more than 200, I believe. Last time I was there, it was more than 200 activities. I can't say enough how important it is to have these back pocket ideas so that we can, again, iterate, combine, really work in the moment. I think that is truly what mastery is. And it's not just about reading. It really is about getting out and doing this work, finding every opportunity. Even if it's an hour, I have people say, oh, well, they only want to work with me for an hour. You know what? Go and do a speaking engagement, because that's when people get to know you, see you, like you or not like you, and that's when they're going to start talking about what you have to offer. But we need to get out when we're working with groups and teams. We need to be with them all the time, even if it is virtually like this. So with that, final point in this prioritization is about consistency. And one of the traps perhaps I'm seeing on the part of a lot of business owners, not just coaches today, is lack of consistency. I even see it in my own business. Is there something that you want to be doing more regularly, more frequently, that's going to get you some traction? One of the things I had let go last year was doing a lot of in-person work, going to conferences, speaking at conferences, having vendor tables at conferences. I had forgotten how much I loved it and how important it was for my business. And I'd done that because I was getting really, like, I think I had just done too many in 2014 as From One to Many was coming out. But even in today's virtual world, we can't replace the face-to-face contact. And for someone who loves to live virtually, that's a pretty powerful statement. So consistency is key. My own commitment in terms of, what I'm going to be focusing on before early September is not just in showing up, because I'm going to be I'm hermiting this summer to get this last manuscript, my third manuscript out and ready. But it's also about continuing to be consistent with messaging. So you may have noticed in the group coaching ins and outs blog, I have not been as active. And that's been because I've been very busy blogging in my leadership blog at the Teams 365. So if I were to spread myself too thin, it would be half and half. For the summer, you may not hear a lot from me in group coaching ins and outs, but rest assured you've got 10 years, actually 11 years now, of great content there, and I'll be continuing to curate some of that. So, question to leave you with is, what does consistent activity look like and mean like for you? Is it about building more relationships? Is it about moving the needle on some of your offerings? Is it about marketing? What do you want to commit to doing before early September? And you've got a good 6-7 weeks before Labor Day. So lots of upcoming work and programs happening here. Again, these are all, other than one happening here in Muskoka tomorrow, these are all happening virtually. So Group Coaching Essentials, we've got Wednesday programs starting in August. The Advanced Group Coaching Practicum is back in the fall, 6 weeks starting September 9th. And note there's no call September 16th. Some of you may be aware that in the fall, the ICF Advanced Conference, which is much smaller, is going to be primarily, or one of 3 theme areas is going to be team coaching. I think they may have sold out, but I will be there eagerly listening to Dr. Jacqueline Peters. Jacqueline and Catherine, one of her business partners, are 2 of the coaches I spotlighted in From One to Many. And she is going to be the keynote actually for that session. So it's happening in Arizona. Check on the ICF website. I think it runs the 15th, 16th of September. Mentor coaching groups will come back in September as well. And all throughout this year, we've got the Learning Lab and Design Studio. This morning, I tried a hackathon with the group that joined me here, and I'm going to be offering another one on July 21st. Also coming for those wanting to build their business, going back to a one-day virtual business planning retreat. You would know that I offer these about twice a year. So the one for summer, if you want to focus on your business, getting connected with your business vision, is coming back on Friday, August 5th. And with that, my question, as always, is to really get you back to this question of what do you want to focus on before early September? Summer is a great time to renew and recharge and to focus. So ultimately, what is the activity you want to undertake? Thank you so much for joining me for yet another call. I look forward to connecting soon. We've got Marie and Dee Dee on the line. Is there anything you want to add in terms of your commitments or what you enjoyed out of today's call that can sort of lock in some of the learning for people who are listening?
Yeah, it's just always helpful to think about amping up. What does it really take to amp up, and think about those 6 to 7 weeks. I'm kind of on the same page as you of being in real time with people. Sometimes it's nice to think about the theory and the plan and the strategy, and there's just a constant sort of discussion versus catching people's attention with really quick action steps to meet the need that they've expressed. I think people are often caught off guard when you really deliver something in a short turnaround. So it's a good focus.
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining us, Marie. And
Sure.
Dee Dee, anything you want to add from what you've just heard or what you've been thinking about?
Yeah, I think what I would say, Jen, is I appreciate your walking through the Your Balanced Life process that you did, and then a reminder of the resources in terms of your own books. And then finally, I guess I'm going to pull in one of your other pieces that I really appreciate. And it was I think it was one of your little webinars on summer projects.
Oh, yeah.
So the aspect of taking stock really hit home for me. And I just really appreciated that. And that's one of my consistent activities I'm going to do.
Ooh, I love it. Taking stock. And if you haven't listened to that, I think it's a pretty brief audio that I did again this summer for the 2016 summer projects. I've done it years ago, but I updated it, and it's only 15 minutes. You know, I think this is one of those windows in our year of as business people, as, you know, professionals in organizations where we can sort of change the pace a bit, whether it's quieter or even busier. Take stock. You know, I think there's real opportunity to leverage what we've already got in our back pockets, in our business, in our networks as well. So thanks for Marie and Dee Dee joining me this morning and into the afternoon. It's been a pleasure. And for the rest of the alumni community, hope you've enjoyed this. Would love to hear your comments. As always, you know, probably one of the best channels is over at the Effective Group Coaching Facebook page, if you are on Facebook. I usually try to post there about once a week, and that'll continue throughout the summer. Different tips, tricks, and hacks. So thanks. Have a great afternoon, everyone, and we'll see you in September. That'll be our next fall program. Thanks for joining me. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.